Okay, so for today's lesson, what we're going to do is extend on the previous work we've done on time series graphs. So the key thing from last lesson was looking at a time series graph was a graph with two sets of axes. We always had time on the bottom, and then the other variable could have been anything else. We're going to extend that a little bit today by, instead of just looking at one line, we're going to look at time series graphs with two lines in them. But as a bit of a refresher from last lesson, the first thing I want you to do is have a go, and you'll need a piece of paper beside you. Pause the video, have a look at this graph on the pie sales over 4 years, and see if, first of all, you can describe any long-term trends, and second of all, describe any short-term trends. So pause the video now. Okay, since you gave that a go, let's first of all look at some long-term trends. Start from the lowest value, going up to the latest value. What's the overall trend? It looks like it's increasing. Even if we compare the peaks, it looks like that the overall trend is increasing. So the value of hot pie sales have tended to increase over the years. For example, the winter prices have gone up steadily from 13,000 to about 29,000. Okay, so part B, describe any short-term values. So the key thing is we should look at the peaks and the troughs. So we can see that there's a pattern from summer to summer. That's one cycle. We end up with another cycle there, one from there to there, and one to there and there. So it's easy with years where it's broken into quarters. We can break it into seasons that will see a cycle. So the values of hot pie sales are high in winter and low in summer. The autumn of year 3 appears to be unusual in that the value of value of sales are lower than what were expected. So that's the key thing, is to compare the different years. You can see year on year the peaks are getting higher and the troughs are getting flattening out as well. So there's a summary of those answers. So looking at question 2, we've got two different time series graphs. The big thing to note is that the scales on the x-axis or at the bottom are the same in both, so we can compare. First of all, I want you to try and find any long-term trends and compare any long-term trends, and secondly, compare any short-term features. Okay, well done for having a go. So retail sales, if we take a look at that, obviously the long-term trend from the starting point to the end point, you can see that we've got an overall increase. Now the fuel sales is a little bit different, that you can see that if I was to do from start to finish, they'll roughly be the same, a slight decrease. The actual trend seems to be that it's a bit of a curve. So there's a bit of a decrease and then it's gone to an increase. So to describe what we've seen here, so after an initial decrease, we've got an increase. So retail sales have tended to steadily increase from March 2009 to December 2014. After an initial drop, it appears that fuel sale values have been relatively stable. More data would be needed to decide if the increase in 2014 is the start of a change in the trend. So what it's saying is that even though there's an increase there, it kind of skews the results, because if you took that away, you probably would be more comfortable putting a line that looks like that. But there has been a steady increase, so that might be a sign of a future trend. So then looking at comparing the short-term features, I think we can see a pattern that goes from peak to peak. So if I cut it from there to there, at the end of the year, there's always a peak just before the end of the year, which of course is Christmas. With fuel, it does seem to be a peak as well around Christmas time. The shape's not always exactly the same, but there does appear to be a repeating pattern there. So the answer we've got, there's a clear seasonal pattern of December highs, Christmas and winter lows in the retail sales data. While the pattern is not so clear in fuel sales, this also shows December highs and winter lows. So just looking for those points is the key one. Example 3, the first time series graph shows you the value of notes, paper money in circulation, which is $3.8 billion. The second time series graph shows the share of core retail spending or electronic transactions. Describe any long-term or short-term time series for both time series graph, any short-term trends for both time series graph. And then the third question is, in 2004, an economist predicted that the electronic transactions would increase in the future, and as a result, less paper money would be in circulation. Comment on the economist's prediction. Support your answer by referring to the features in your graph. So, key thing there, just start with the first question, look at long-term trends. Obviously, the notes in circulation is going up. Electronic transactions going up. If we take a look at the patterns, again, good old Christmas peak around here, which is quite prevalent to the paper money. There, if we look at the electronic transactions, though, there are peaks. It doesn't appear to be as seasonal as it is for the paper, but there are peaks around that December time once again. However, the interesting part is it's a bit more settled around this time. That's more of a repeatable pattern. Be interesting to see whether that continues. So if we go through each bit. So firstly, on the long-term trends, both graphs have increasing long-term trends. For the value of notes, there's a steady increase, while the electronic transactions, there's a change in the rate of increase is greater in 2007. So that's talking about the fact that there's a massive increase there. There's a clear seasonal pattern of December highs and midwinter lows in the graph for the value of the notes. Such a pattern is not obvious in the electronics transactions graph. There is a step up in electronic transactions in 2007, something that did not happen with the value of notes. It'd be worth investigating to see what the possible reason could be. It may be that the banks adopted more electronic transactions, or debit cards came in, something like that. C, so the last thing is our economist predicted that electronic transactions would increase, but paper money, where it would result in less paper money, and it doesn't appear that supports that prediction. Our graphs support that prediction. Both have increasing trends. To support the prediction, you would have the electronic transactions increasing while the value of notes decreasing, and that's not the case. It would actually be interesting now with people's behaviour to compare the values over the last 6 months. You might see that there is a lot less money in circulation, or paper money, physical money in circulation, compared to electronic transactions. What I'd like you to have a go at is looking at this exercise, is have a go at looking at the features of both these graphs. So what we have is the unemployment rate of males and females between March 2005 and 2015. I want you to have a go at trying to put together a paragraph looking at the long-term and short-term features of this graph. What can we find? So pause the video, spend some time, try to find 3 or 4 points putting it together. So first of all, start off with the long trends that you see, then the short-term features. Okay, how do you get on? So the key thing, the graph shows several trends after a relatively stable period between 2005 and 2008. Talking about this area, there is a significant step up in the employment rate. If we remember back to that time, that's roughly the same time that the global financial crisis, GFC, which is roughly around about that time. From 2012, the long-term trend is a decreasing one. So from 2012, we suddenly got decrease. So it stabilized about at 2010, and then it started decreasing for both females and males. Unemployment rates tended to be dropping. The unemployment rate for females tends to be higher than the unemployment rate for males, and in more recent years, the gap in unemployment rate between males and females appears to be increasing. So it would appear that during the global financial crisis that the unemployment affected males and females the same. It might be that through this time there's a reason why females weren't able to get back into work as quickly as the males. That would need more investigation. So hopefully it gives you a bit of help looking at trying to find features in time series graphs. It's one of those things that every time you see a graph, it's always going to be slightly different because it's a different context. Key thing is trying to find features and not trying to invent answers, that it's something that you could investigate rather than complete. So there is a OneNote lesson worksheet from the workbook to complete. So go to that now.